Look closely at this image showing the absolute destruction of San Francisco as major highways crumble and massive plumes of black smoke rise from the shattered coastal landscape. This is not a scene from a Hollywood disaster movie, but a chilling visualization of what happens when the ground beneath our feet finally reaches its ultimate breaking point. At exactly 1:41 in the morning near Santa Cruz, the earth began to tremble with a magnitude 4.6 earthquake that jolted thousands of residents from sleep. While a quake of this size is significant, what truly terrified geologists was not the initial shaking, but the haunting, absolute silence that followed in the hours that came after. Normally, an earthquake of this magnitude would be accompanied by dozens of significant aftershocks as the tectonic plates adjust, yet this time the world recorded only one tiny tremor. That single aftershock registered at only 1.4 magnitude, a statistical anomaly that suggests the Cascadia subduction zone is currently locked tight and accumulating a massive amount of energy. When the Earth stops ringing after a major impact, it is never good news because it signifies that the fault lines are no longer slipping but are instead becoming stuck. This fatal flaw in the geological structure of California means that the pressure is building toward a catastrophic release that could trigger the most powerful earthquake in modern human history. For 7 consecutive days, the region has been haunted by 1,283 tremors, signaling that the giant Cascadia monster is finally waking up from its long slumber. As we watch these high-speed highways collapse into the ocean, we must ask ourselves if we are prepared for the moment the West Coast truly reaches its final breaking limit. Every second that passes in this eerie silence brings us closer to a magnitude 9 event that will rewrite the maps of North America and change our world forever. Today, we dive deep into the data of these 1,283 tremors to understand why the silence of California is the loudest warning we have ever received. Many people living along the San Andreas Fault find comfort in the belief that small earthquakes act like pressure release valves that prevent a catastrophic disaster from occurring soon. There is a widespread myth suggesting that every minor tremor we feel is actually a good thing because it supposedly bleeds off the energy stored deep within the tectonic plates. However, when we examine the cold, hard physics of seismology, this comforting idea reveals itself to be a dangerous illusion that ignores the terrifying reality of logarithmic scales. To understand the scale of the threat, we must realize that a magnitude 7 earthquake is not just twice as strong as a magnitude 3.5 event. In terms of energy release, each whole number increase on the seismic scale represents a massive 32-fold increase in the actual power being unleashed by the shifting crust. According to the renowned seismologist Dr. Lucy Jones, you would actually need 1,000 magnitude 5 earthquakes to equal the energy released by a single magnitude 7.0 event. When we apply this math to the recent 4.6 tremor in Santa Cruz, it becomes clear that this event did absolutely nothing to reduce the overall tectonic strain. It is like trying to drain a massive, overflowing swimming pool using a single tiny teaspoon, while a heavy rainstorm continues to pour thousands of gallons into the water. Instead of acting as a safety valve, these smaller quakes are more like the first hairline fractures appearing on the concrete surface of a massive dam about to burst wide open. They are warnings that the structural integrity of the Pacific Plate is failing, yet the public remains largely unaware of how little pressure has actually been released by these events. We are currently standing on a ticking time bomb, where the small tremors are merely the sound of the clock counting down toward a definitive and unavoidable geological catastrophe. As the silence returns and the pressure continues to mount, the illusion of safety fades away, leaving us vulnerable to the raw, unbridled power of the shifting earth beneath us. Stretching for over 1,000 kilometers from northern Vancouver Island down to Cape Mendocino in California, the Cascadia subduction zone is the sleeping giant of the entire North American continent. Unlike the famous San Andreas Fault that mostly slides horizontally, the Cascadia zone involves one massive tectonic plate diving deep beneath another in a process called subduction. This geological process creates an immense amount of friction and pressure that has been building for over 300 years without a single major release of energy occurring. In just one recent 7-day period, Sophisticated seismic sensors recorded exactly 1,283 slow slip events vibrating deep within the crust of the Pacific Northwest. Scientists refer to this specific phenomenon as episodic tremor and slip, which serves as a visible heartbeat of the massive tectonic struggle happening miles beneath our busy cities. While these 1,283 tremors are too deep to be felt by humans, they are powerful enough to be picked up by the global satellite network. This record-breaking number of tremors reveals that the Juan de Fuca plate is currently pushing the North American plate inland and compressing it like a giant metal spring. Every single one of these slow slip events adds more tension to the fault line, bringing the entire West Coast closer to the point of total structural failure and collapse. The problem is that the upper part of the Cascadia Fault is currently locked tight, meaning the plates are stuck together while the deeper parts continue to move forward. When the pressure finally overcomes the friction of the locked zone, it will release all the accumulated energy from the last 3 centuries in a matter of a few minutes. A magnitude 9.0 earthquake generated by Cascadia would be 1,000 times more powerful than the devastating magnitude 6.0 quakes we often see on news. If the entire length of the fault ruptures at once, the ground shaking could last for 5 full minutes, which is long enough to destroy almost any modern building. Modern GPS data shows that coastal cities like Seattle and Portland are actually moving several millimeters eastward every year because the tectonic plates are currently being squeezed so hard. This crustal shortening is a clear scientific warning that the ground is bulging upward, waiting for the moment it can snap back to its original position with violent force. The 1,283 tremors recorded this week suggest that the deep-seated tectonic movement is accelerating at a pace that has never been seen before. We are watching a giant clock count down in real time, and every single slow slip event is another tick toward the inevitable magnitude 9.0 megathrust disaster. Historical records from Native American oral traditions and Japanese tsunami reports confirm that the last time this monster woke up was in the year 1700. That event caused the coastline to drop by several feet instantly and sent a massive tsunami across the Pacific Ocean that reached the shores of Japan 10 hours later. Since that event occurred 324 years ago, the region is now officially within the window of time for another massive rupture to happen at any second. Geologists worry that the 1,283 tremors are not just random noise, but are actually precursors to the final failure of the Cascadia interface. The sheer density of these events across the entire length of the subduction zone indicates that the entire system is reaching its limit of elastic deformation. Imagine the energy of millions of tons of rock being pushed against each other every second, with nowhere for that massive power to go except into the crust. The data is screaming at us that the Cascadia giant is no longer just sleeping, but is now tossing and turning in its restless geological bed under the sea. As the frequency of these tremors increases, the likelihood of a massive rupture grows, leaving tens of millions of people in the Pacific Northwest in extreme danger. We must face the reality that 1,283 warnings have been sent to us in a single week, and the time for preparation is disappearing. Earth's surface is not a solid shell, but a collection of massive tectonic plates that are constantly grinding together in a violent and unpredictable global dance. The Pacific Plate is the largest of these tectonic pieces, forming what geologists call the Ring of Fire, where most of the world's most powerful earthquakes occur. Recently, a massive 7.4 magnitude earthquake rocked the Western Pacific, sending powerful shockwaves throughout the entire tectonic system that encircles the vast ocean. This massive event was quickly followed by a 6.2 magnitude aftershock, proving that the entire Pacific Plate is currently experiencing an intense period of movement. Think of the Pacific Plate as a giant dinner plate floating on a liquid surface, where pushing one side inevitably causes the other side to shift. When a 7.4 magnitude quake occurs in the west, the resulting pressure is pushed across the ocean floor toward the shores of California and Cascadia. Geologists have discovered that our planet is interconnected by a complex seismic web, meaning that massive events on one continent can trigger stress on the other. As the Western Pacific releases its energy, The eastern edge along the California coast must absorb that extra stress, pushing our fault lines even closer to their limit. This global connection does not stop at the coastline, but reaches deep into the heart of the American continent toward the sleeping supervolcano known as Yellowstone. Seismic monitoring stations located within Yellowstone National Park have recently begun recording unusual clusters of small earthquakes, known to geologists as seismic swarms. These Yellowstone swarms suggest that the tectonic pressure from the Cascadia subduction zone is leaking inland and affecting the delicate plumbing system of the massive volcano. The entire western United States is essentially sitting on a vibrating network of energy where every major geological feature is linked together in a dangerous sequence. As the Cascadia giant rumbles with its 1,283 tremors, the magma chambers beneath Yellowstone respond with their own subtle shifts and vibrations. Our planet is constantly trying to reach a state of geological equilibrium, but the current rate of activity suggests a global balance that is rapidly failing. The 1,283 tremors in the Pacific Northwest are not isolated incidents, but are part of this grand, terrifying global rearrangement of land. We are witnessing the first few dominoes falling in a chain reaction that could eventually involve the most dangerous geological zones on the entire North American continent. Scientists are now closely monitoring these shifts across the Ring of Fire to predict exactly where the next massive release of tectonic energy will finally occur. While the earthquakes in the Western Pacific are visible and destructive, the silent accumulation of pressure along the Cascadia subduction zone is a much greater threat. The San Andreas Fault and the Cascadia Zone are connected by the same tectonic forces, creating a double threat that could devastate the entire West Coast simultaneously. This geological synchronization means that a major rupture in one zone could theoretically trigger a massive failure in the other, leading to a truly apocalyptic disaster scenario. Yellowstone acts as a sensitive barometer for the tectonic health of the continent, and its current state of unrest is a major cause for scientific concern. We are seeing pressure migration happening in real time, moving from the depths of the ocean floor directly into the foundation of our most populated coastal cities. The final link in this global chain is the Cascadia interface, which has remained dangerously quiet while the rest of the Pacific Rim continues to explode. Understanding these 1,283 tremors requires us to look beyond California and recognize the massive global forces that are currently at work. The West Coast has reached its limit because it can no longer absorb the relentless pressure being pushed toward it from every corner of the Pacific Ocean. Despite the clear and present geological signs, life continues as normal for millions of people, but this calmness is born from a dangerous misunderstanding of planetary time. We have spent many decades being reassured by official statements that downplay the severity of individual quakes, leading to a profound and deadly sense of false security. The southern San Andreas Fault is currently overdue for a major rupture by over 150 years, yet we continue to build massive skyscrapers right on top. While San Andreas is the most famous, the Cascadia subduction zone is the true silent killer that has been gathering energy for over 3 centuries now. The recent magnitude 4.6 event in Santa Cruz, followed by absolute silence and aftershocks, is the smoking gun that tells us the fault is locked. Those 1,283 slow slip tremors are the Earth's way of screaming that the entire system is reaching its final limit of endurance. This pattern of seismic activity serves as a final indictment for the West Coast, proving that the infrastructure we rely on is built on a crumbling foundation. If Cascadia ruptures today, the interstate highways like Interstate 5 will be severed in thousands of locations, leaving millions of residents without any way to escape. Within 5 minutes of the main shock, electricity, clean water, and the internet will likely vanish across the entire Pacific Northwest for weeks or even months. We are living through the same cycle that devastated this very coastline in the year 1700, and history is clearly preparing to repeat itself once again. The West Coast has reached its geological limit, and the 1,283 tremors are the final rhythmic beats of a heart about to explode. Ignoring these signs is no longer an option, because the data provided by our modern technology confirms that the danger is not theoretical, but is actively occurring. Preparation must happen now, before the ground under your feet becomes a moving sea of concrete and steel that you cannot control or escape from. Do not let the quiet nights fool you into thinking that you are safe from the 1,283 signals sent directly from the deep. The silence after the 4.6 quake was the loudest warning of all, a final breath taken by the planet before the ultimate release of power. Every person living on the edge of the Pacific must decide if they will trust a feeling of safety or the cold, hard data of science. The big one is no longer a myth or a future possibility. It is a mathematical certainty that is manifesting through these 1,283 events. As the sun sets over the beautiful but broken landscape of California, we are left with one final question that determines our survival in the coming years. Will you continue to believe in a false sense of security, or will you listen to the 1,283 warnings beneath your feet? The clock is ticking toward midnight, and the Earth has already given us every single signal we need to know that the end of silence is here.